Hello, Vince.
Right.
Okay, so we've
Hey,
pinned
Peter.
our panelists across the top, and we're at 6. So rather than continue to lead things off here, I'm going to hand things over to Christina. Before I do, though, I'll say welcome to everybody to our panel discussion for tonight, to all our guests, to our student assistants who are helping out with letting people in, managing chat, etc. And Christina, who is going to be our MC for the evening and have questions for the panel. So why don't I leave it there and let Christina take things away.
Thank you, Peter. First of all, I want to say hi to everyone. Hello, Winston, Rodrigo, and Vince. My name is Christina, and today I will be the moderator. And hopefully, this will be a very lively conversation like webinar, more less of a question and answer. I would like to also welcome all the audiences, and as they trickle in, today's topic is career panel and Q&A led by Seneca for the National Engineering Month of Ontario. Excuse me, Ontario. So Peter is the person, is the host, and my name is Christina, and Wang and Sad will be in the background, just making sure the housekeeping stuff. And for our audiences, if you have any questions, for the time being, you're muted, I believe. Is that so? If you have any questions, make sure to put it in the chat, or if you have any questions that you want to ask at that point, you can always raise your hand, and Sad will unmute you as required. All right, so let's talk about the agenda. I believe I have it here. Agenda for today. We'll start by introducing all our panelists, and we'll dive right into our discussion about all of your great experiences from the industry and what a lot of insights that you'll be bringing to our students and all the other audiences that we have today. And then we will also bring in the audience Q&A towards the end. Hopefully we'll have a lot of interesting questions for you guys, and we'll wrap it up after, and there will be a poll before everyone leaves just to kind of give a feedback about today's event. So welcome, panelists. Audiences and panelists. So I will start introducing everyone, and please feel free to chime in if you want to add something. If I'm missing some crucial part out, I apologize at the beginning. So Rodrigo, hi.
Hello.
I will start with you. So Rodrigo, I will start with the education part. So today we're talking a lot about like education and career together, side by side. So Rodrigo has a bachelor's in chemical engineering from Brazil, and he also has a master's in analytical biochemistry. During which, when he was pursuing it, he was also working as a chemical analyst and a product specialist. And after coming to Toronto, he's a Seneca alumni for chemical engineering technology, and at the moment he is working at Stackpole International company as a formulation chemist, I believe, right?
That's all correct.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our next guest, Winston. Hello.
Hello,
Winston.
everyone.
Hello. Winston studied chemical engineering technology in Sheridan and completed his bachelor's in chemical engineering at Lakehead, Thunder Bay. He has certification with OSET and also PEO as a professional engineer. At the moment, he is working at Ministry of Transportation as a chemical corrosion engineer and making sure that our roads are safe, we're driving everybody. Thank you, Winston, for being part of the team that keeps us safe on the road. And and last but not the least, we have sorry, whoops, went too fast on that one. Vincent. Hello, Vincent.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
Good. So Vincent has a bachelor's in electrical engineering at Queen's University. Before that, he also has an MBA from Dublin, Ireland, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
that's correct. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, you got it.
And and also he is a certified professional engineer of Ontario. He has experience with working with Ontario Energy Board, excuse me of that, and Metrolinx. And currently he is working on, I believe, the lifelong learning and the example of lifelong learning. He's pursuing data analytics.
Yeah,
Right?
that's correct. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
At Springboard.
Yeah.
So that is just a short and sweet introduction to everyone. Hopefully, all good. Anyone wants to add anything on that? No? Yeah? No?
No, it's great.
All
it's great.
right.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
All right. I will just go ahead straight into the discussion. I'm pretty sure everyone, all the audiences are excited to know what you have to say for learning for life, lifelong learning, same thing. So I guess we can start our discussion by asking, what does lifelong learning really mean to you, and how does it reflect your journey? I will actually just go by pictures on my screen. So Winston, hi.
Hi.
What
Okay,
does
I'll start.
lifelong learning mean to you? And if you could share some experiences on that.
Well, I guess school prepares you in more general term to tackle your work challenges. But to me, lifelong learning means keeping abreast of current technology in your work and taking all the training courses and reading trade magazines, taking part in technical discussions, collaborating with your peers, basically becoming an expert in your chosen field. That's what it means to me.
Right. Can you give some examples where you were some examples in your career that really reflects on lifelong learning? An example.
Okay, so in my previous job, so previous to MTU, I worked at Shawcor for 23 years in product development. So it was product development for polymers used in pipeline coatings and wire and cable, heat shrink tubing, all sorts of, it was mostly polymer related products.
Yeah.
So like coming from my school education, I didn't really have a background in thermal analysis techniques, which is polymer characterization techniques. So I spent a lot of time learning about things like differential scanning calorimetry, thermogravimetric analysis, DMA, dynamic mechanical analysis. So I actually went on training courses all over the US. I think my most interesting one was DMA training. Oh, wait a minute. My most interesting one was DMA training in at the University of Minnesota. That took like 2 weeks. That was intense. That was the most challenging training in rheology. But after I came back, I learned so much about the technique of using rheology to analyze polymers that I was able to help out a lot of the development team. So that's an example.
Oh, that is very, very interesting. Moving on to Rodrigo, I believe you also have some background with polymers. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, just first of all, just to trying to define this learning for life, right? This process.
Mhm.
Well, when I started this, my chemical engineering program 20 years ago. So this was I just started in 1998 and graduated in 2003. So it's a long time ago, and I believe that I think instead of trying to define this terminology, I think an example would be more suitable or a good fit for you guys to understand the way that I see that. So if I go back to the beginning of my professional experience, just after my graduation, so since that point up to now, I have changed the industry, I think 3-4 times. So what I mean with that is, so I firstly started when my first job was, well, I took my internship with what we call it's a pure or fine chemistry industry, taking it's a process, it's a purification process for phosphoric acid, right? So they basically they extract the acid from the mine, and then they attack this this phosphoric this rock with acid, and then there is a chemical reaction in there. So, and then I will not go through all this process, but I started with that as my first, I would say, exposure to chemical engineering. And then after that, I changed it to pharmaceuticals. And then I started like working with pharmaceuticals and what we call is cosmeceutics. It's a mix. It's a subdivision of pharmaceuticals which deal mostly with cosmetics. So, and then after that, I went to work with cleaning products, or I would say it's more like consumer goods in general, like what you guys all have, all those laundry products or soap for dishes and even hand soap and all those type of consumer goods.
Mhm.
So and then after that again, I moved to what I'm working nowadays is with automotive industry. So
Mhm.
so if we compare, we see that I started at one industry and then I moved to another one and I moved to another one. And then when you go through this process, you've got to learn each type of industry. You've got to learn how the industry works, what you're gonna do, what and your competitors. You need to understand the company's policies and what you're gonna be basically like a multitask person. So a lot of things that you've got to go through at different industries, and once you change one industry to another, things change. So this is a learning for life, right? So you never stop learning. You're gonna change. You're gonna go for another job. You work at another company. You're gonna have to learn everything again. So I'm still learning, right? I'm now at
Yeah.
Stackpole. I've been there. I've been working for Stackpole for about 2 years. I have a lot to learn. This is a big project which I'm participating in, and I'm still learning a lot. So every day it's an everyday journey.
Yes, definitely. Every day is a new day to learn, right?
Yeah, right.
Yes, and I guess the idea we take away from that is not to be afraid to try new things, right?
Absolutely. It's if you think as you said, you will not develop yourself, right? So if you've got to just be open mind, like have an open mindset and say, okay, it's not easy, but now, like after all, when you look back and say, wow, I worked at this industry, I work at that industry, I learned this, I learned that, and then you see that your knowledge becomes so broad, and then you are able to at least to address a conversation or discussion with any people, right? Anyone. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and on that point, Vince, I believe that this also really relates with you in terms of changing not just your career, but you also pursued studying like courses that's different, right? How did that?
It's a good good segue, and I think what Rodrigo says too just is really highlights this idea that you can't hide in your discipline. So you may start out as a chemical engineer, and then you're either working in mechanical areas and needing to work with mechanical engineers or electrical engineers, or translating for people in business, or at least having to translate technical requirements into language that can be accepted by people making business decisions within a company. So it's a good highlight there. But I guess for me, like I think I was scribbling down a few things before this, and I thought I got 3 words, and it was PPE, which I thought was appropriate, but it's passion, professionalism, and enthusiasm. So I think really, pursuing a lot of lifelong learning and in different areas, it shows that you really care about the work that you're doing. I think that on the professionalism front, staying abreast of things, just like Winston has said, is like you have to keep up with these training courses. Just otherwise, they say it's a lot more turbulent to be a rock in a river and sit there rather than be a log kind of rolling down the river. It's a lot less less turbulent if you're moving with the current. So you need to keep learning in your discipline, outside your discipline, and learning things. So, and from my experience, just when I started out, I was an electrical engineer. I think my first job I was working for like a chemicals journal for kind of temp work and having to read publications that were written in a completely different area than I would understand, and then trying to convince authors to come and show up at conferences. That was my first little kind of job I had overseas. And then my first job back in the States, in Canada, was, they were like, well, you're an electrical engineer, so let's put you in natural gas. So, immediately I was having to, do a lot of learning around just pipelines, safety and processes for that, and just, entirely different areas, even outside of engineering. So whether it was like regulatory accounting, simple things like T accounts and this kind of stuff, it's just, you just can't hide, and you're always, I find every day I'm trying to learn new stuff. And more recently, I'm trying to get into more of a data analytics space. There's a lot of, I'd say, low hanging fruit in the utility space around just, things have been done a certain way. There's an acronym they used to talk about, DUGs, dumb old utility guys. And that, things are modernizing now quickly. There's a lot more compute power that can be thrown at a lot of engineering problems. And so like having an ability to handle big data sets, apply that to asset management processes can be a pretty big thing. And so I'm talking to a lot of people in that space right now and see what I can actually do with companies in that space. So really, to sum it up, you can't hide. If you want to just sit down and only talk with, if you're an electrical engineer and you only want to talk with electrical engineers, it's not going to be a really, the conversation won't be all that, thrilling, but it's just, you're always going to work with people outside your discipline, and you're always going to have to learn in different areas. So it's definitely a good habit to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It seems like everyone here has lifelong learning experiences and has incorporated it like in your life, in your thinking, which is like amazing. And I'm pretty sure everyone has this question because a lot of audience here might be graduating soon or in the career and thinking, okay, what do I do next? And how do I do it? So I guess moving on, our next topic is, how do you keep yourself motivated to have this mindset of to advance your career in this way and to learn? What are some of the tips and tricks you could share if you can on lifelong learning? being motivated and inspired. And anyone can chime in at this point, or if you want, I can.
I'll take a kick at it. So
Okay.
if it's okay with my co-panelists here, the first thing I kind of say is, and the other panelists can answer it a different way, but I think it's almost a trick question, because you're not always going to find motivation for this. But I think what you can really not fall back on, but what you can really rely on is planning and goal setting, and kind of really kind of have targets for things that you do want to like knock off your list, or areas that you want to learn in, and then sort of get that all down on a page and somewhere you can see it. And so that, if you're lacking the motivation, at least it's front and center. And, you can reflect on whether you achieve those goals and what you set out to do. And then you get a much better sense of kind of how you're faring, rather than just sort of kind of meandering through, year after year. I think if you do just you set clear goals, and do some planning up front, it can make the process a lot more palatable. And if you wake up, it's like going to the gym. It's like you wake up. Do you always want to go to the gym? Not really, but you may. You can chip away at it, and you can certainly, you take the guesswork out of it by just having that plan and those goals in place.
Yeah, you get a sense of accomplishment out of doing it, and that's what drives you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to complement what they said, I think just using Winston's and Vince's words, I would say the same, and I would add your passion for your profession, right? So yeah, I pick myself as an example. When I moved to Toronto 7 years ago, and then I went to Seneca, I had to go through a lot of things before being accepted. So I had to take an English test, international English test, which is not easy. It's a British test. This was first, right? So IELTS, yeah. So this is the first step, and then I chose to go for a co-op program, but I had to do another English test to be accepted. I failed in that test, so I didn't get a co-op. I got very disappointed with myself, and many things happened, right? So, but again, this is a real an example that I kept myself motivated, and then said, no, I'm gonna thrive in this program, and I did my best. And at the end of the program, when everything was going well, and then I was just awarded by being awarded by the Canadian Institute of Chemistry as with the highest GPA in this CHY program, right? And this thing was something very surprising for me, something that I was not expecting, because I haven't targeted for that. I targeted to be successful in my career here in Canada, but this thing just came along with, right? And I said, wow, and this thing, as Winston said, this feeling of accomplishment, and that thing, not just because the award, but said, wow, I can do it, right? So and then I, after this period, again, I went through another challenge, like after graduation, even with my background, master's, my bachelor, and everything, my experience, it took me about 4 months to get a job, right? And then again, you start over again, and then this thing I would say it's an endless, I don't want to say battle, but it's an endless process. So you go week by week, you set goals, and so you go step by step, day by day, week by week. You set that goal. Don't set goals too large. I would say long-term goals. In 5 years, that's okay. Don't go over 5, because things change, and but it's important. Make a plan, set your goal, make a plan, and go through it. And I think this is the way that I have done, and so far, good things has happened to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Rodrigo. That is absolutely what I was going for next. The challenges that comes with lifelong learning, and that was such a nice segue into it. So yeah, I definitely agree. It will come with its set of like hills to climb and ups and downs. And so since all of you have so much experience out in the field, I'm sure a lot of the audiences will want to know some like what to expect in this in like when you go out and look for jobs, or when you're trying to transition like into a new completely new career. Well, what kind of challenges do you think we should kind of prepare ourselves with?
I'll
And yeah,
try and take that
Winston,
question.
yeah.
Okay, so I worked in the same place for 23 years, and then I got another job at the Ministry of Transportation, doing I would say something completely different. So I got out of my comfort zone, something that I've been doing for 23 years. I knew everybody there, and I decided to just make a complete switch. So when I got to this new position, I was like the new guy. I had to relearn everything because the field I'm in now is mostly pavement markings and structural steel corrosion protection systems for bridges like the Burlington Skyway, for instance. So I work in the materials engineering office, and we basically evaluate materials to be used in transportation infrastructure. So I had to learn a lot about a lot of different materials, and I had to become very good at it very quickly, because at the MTO, it's mostly civil engineers. The amount of chemical engineers is not that many. I think I've only met 2 other chemical engineers. So everybody relies on you to be the expert in everything related to chemicals and materials. So I had to get up to speed very quickly. So that involved a lot of reading and a lot of learning, but eventually I'm there. So after 7 years there, I feel very confident in my abilities. So I guess you basically have to be versatile in order to survive in the workplace.
Does any other panelists have anything to add on that? Vince?
Yeah, well, I guess yeah, I think one thing, I think it's good to get. I know a lot of high performers like in this space, and the idea of I'd say getting a healthy relationship with failure is an important thing to get kind of early on in your career. If you don't get it in like in an academic setting, but just being willing to sort of push your experience out, and even if you're not like competent in that area, pairing with someone who's more senior to you, but again, and then working things out and having to check your responses or whatever, check your work and this kind of thing. That aside, I do think it's important to sort of be pushing the envelope, pushing your experience out and what you're comfortable with. And I mean, and in your career, just like Winston said, like you may find yourself in one job for a long time. I think I was in my first job, I moved around a bit, but I was there for 10 years. And so, and it's maybe a little scary like to leave, but then you can end up in a completely different area and then push out your experience curve again, and then move to something else and push out that experience curve yet again. And whether that's in, if it's purely in engineering, if you're moving into more of like a commercial or business related role. But again, I'd say it's all additive. It all builds your, your versatility, and, it helps you with, as Rodrigo put, like the battle, like you're sort of more, you're weather tested. You're not always, going out for a run in nice weather. Like you're running in the rain, and you're going through challenges to make yourself better. So I think it's important to sort of, to persevere, to have that healthy relationship with failure, because it's an important, I'd say, accelerator of learning to actually fail at something, especially if it's outside your area. I think first counting exams I took outside of engineering, spectacular failures in those areas. But again, it helped to develop me as a professional. So yeah, Rodrigo, do you want to add anything in there as well, or I don't want to take all the airtime, so I'm gonna.
No. So no. No worries. Feel free. I think the way that you two just put on that. just giving my personal example, just as Winston he did. This is what happened to me, right? So when I transitioned from my previous job and I was in another field working with consumer goods and cleaning products, and then I got this offer from Stackpole. Say, look, we are looking for a person who is capable of doing this, doing that, and right. So and blah blah blah. Or during the interview, do you think that you're going to be a good fit for this? And so at that time, I decided that it was the time to leave my previous company, because there was no possibilities for me for advancement and career growth. So I was kind of like stuck, and this was being I would say offered by Stackpole. I said I think I will take a chance, and I did. But the thing is, when I did that, I was going and moving from something that I was familiar with, at least, and to something that I've never touched it before. And then, just as Winston said regarding maybe one or two chemical engineers among all civil engineers, to me is happening now. In the history of this company, Stackpole has 100 years old. I'm the first chemical engineer hired in this company. I just work with mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, mechatronical engineers, all different, and then I'm the only one. And then they basically rely on me for all chemical issues. So my title is a formulation chemist, but I don't think that I'm just spending my everyday and say, oh no, that's formulate chemicals, and no. I'm now designing 2 chemical reactors, 1 spray dryer, talking with mechanical engineers every single day. I have learned a lot. You've got to understand the materials to design your reactors. I've never thought that I would have to learn that 304 is stainless steel is the most adequate material for this kind of equipment, or you have 3116. So things that I've never learned before, or never even no academic training or previous experiences. So these are everyday challenges. So I had to catch up on everything and say, look, and then you ask your colleagues help. You, as Winston said, you go and a lot of reading. I think last year I purchased, I think 4 or 5 textbooks, and then I had to try to broaden my knowledge to other fields, learning about materials engineering as well, mechanical engineering. So these are challenges, right? So, and then the way that we three here are here to tell you is, how do you get over this, overcome these challenges? You get this motivation, and well, we talked this before, right? So you set goals and said, oh look, I want to be successful in this project, right? So and then to do that, some of that is this motivation is your passion for your profession, for what you do. So I like what I do, and then sometimes I don't like, I'm asking my boss asking me, oh no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. So things that I don't like, I'll be honest with you, I'm gonna share. I don't like going to suppliers and ask for quotes. Can I get a quote for this? It's kind of boring for me, because it's more, I would say, business, I would say, oriented. And then I'm a very technical person, so I don't like this. But you've got to do it, right? Your boss doesn't care. Like, you do like, you don't like it. I need the quote, so I've got to provide him a quote. So these are things that you have to understand, that you will not be. I'm a formulation chemist, so you're gonna spend your day just as formulating chemicals. No, not at all. Don't have this. I would say, very close mindset. You're gonna be a multitask. This is very important nowadays. They look for people who are multitask people. So you gotta do one thing. I gotta do two things, 3 things, different things. Project management, guys. Think about this in your career when you graduate at this course, and then you're gonna go further. Project management. If you don't have a schedule, for your boss, if you don't have resources in terms of human resources, right? People to do the work. If you don't have a plan, this thing, you're gonna get in trouble because they will ask you, oh, there is no timeline for the task. There is no people to do that, right? These are what we call constraints for your project because you don't have time, you don't have people. So I'm giving you an example. So I think just the way that Vince and Winston they said, I just gave or I gave you my personal example, what's going on with me, right? So you think about it. How do you think that sometimes I think, like I feel I'm the only chemical engineer, in the middle of mechanical, electricals, my balls and everything, and then I just sometimes said, what am I doing here? But the good part on that is everything, any kind of chemical process related to that company at Stackpole, they come to me. And this, makes you feel good. And then, drives you every day and said, well, I may not know much, but regarding this topic, I hold my own, and then they, I can just, help my colleagues here. And
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, even if you're in a different, completely different environment, doesn't have to be like a fish out of water. You can always
No.
learn to adapt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the interest of time, I just have one last topic and question for you guys and for the audiences. If you haven't already have questions sent to the chat, please do so for these amazing panelists and all of their experiences that they're sharing with us. So the last thing, the advantages of all of your decisions that you've made for your lifelong learning, whether it is branching out into different careers or learning new skills, updating your skills, or just specializing more on something you enjoy or was interested in. What are some of the advantages? And I know that we've already kind of discussed it in terms of like people come to you because you have that knowledge. But if you don't mind, just give some more examples on some of the advantages of having this lifelong learning skill and mindset for everyone, just as a or I'll just choose. Okay, Winston.
Okay. Well, I guess my phone is going off again. I guess there's tons of advantages for always having that mindset that you should keep on learning after you finish school. Like school prepares you basically to get a job, and after you get that job, you need to prove your worth, because the reason why you're working. I learned this from one of my professors from Sheridan College a long time ago. The reason why you're working is to make money. And to make money, you need to be good at what you do. There's a lot of other people out there who can do the same thing that you do. So you have to basically always have an edge. So to have that edge, it comes with basically preparing yourself and just looking at what is needed in your chosen field and going after it. So it could be project management, it could be lead, it could be all these buzzwords that you see in all these job ads, like Kaizen and all these black belt QA. Just get certified and all of that. And if, let's say, there's a downturn in the economy and you need to switch jobs, you always want to be at your top, at your peak level in terms of competitiveness. So I guess that's the advantage of always learning.
Yeah, especially during this time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'd add a couple things to what Winston said there, but I guess the first thing is, I think if you're going to spend a lot of time learning about things in your field and outside your field, I think wherever you work, you'll be interesting. You'll have something to talk about with people. And if you're learning outside of your own domain as well, you'll also be able to ask appropriate questions or challenge appropriately. And if you become known as someone who spends the time to to learn these other things and to read about them. You're not starting at square one, you're starting at maybe square four with a more appropriate question and an understanding, and you'll get the respect of your colleagues and peers for taking that sort of approach. But the last thing I'd say is from Winston's point about you're no longer competing with the person down the street in your city. It's a very global economy. There are a lot of people out there that are happy to eat your lunch, take your job, that sort of thing. So you need to be always upskilling. But one really critical thing I think in my career anyway that's helped me is to be what's called a gap spanner. So it's really the intersections between different fields where a lot of people where that intersection doesn't exist with a lot of people. If you find yourself in that space, where those two circles overlap, you may be, you may happen to be a formulation chemist that also knows a lot about, other mechanical processes or something, and it makes you a very unique, I would never say indispensable, but like certainly a person that provides value within a company. And then I moved from energy to transit, and then I was one of the people that knew a lot about utilities and energy work within the transit space. That helped me there. And then when I moved from back from transit back to energy and regulatory to a very, very small shop, it's just like Rodrigo says, you're now the expert on every single regulatory issue, and they'll come and ask you about it. And so you find like that's a nice accountability to have. But again, it's you're covering off where fields intersect. So yeah, that can be very valuable to just be a gap spanner or cover like intersectional areas. So learn your field like in depth. It's an admirable thing to do, but certainly be curious outside of your trench, because it can help you with whether you're in in business or you're in research or something else. It can just help you to approach problems in kind of I'd say unique ways, or see how other people see the problems from their perspective coming from a different field. That's a run-on sentence. Anyway, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Vince. Rodrigo, do you have anything to add on that?
At this time, I make my words, Vince's and Winston's words. They have, I believe, that pretty much covered, what do we believe that the advantages of this long life learning process. I'll tell you, you'll never lose. You just win. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, time flies. It's already 6:45, and I believe do we have questions sent here, or does anyone have? Feel free to raise your hand or to unmute yourself and join the conversation. In the meantime, I would like to pull up a poll for everyone. Just give me a moment. It is for your feedback on the webinar and this conversation.
While you're doing that, Christina, if I can just chime in.
Yeah.
Just to firstly say, everything you've spoken about so far, it's been really, really valuable to hear the perspectives of all of our panelists. I did want to ask a question to maybe kick things off, and maybe some other questions can jump on top of that. So when you talked about different disciplines and how it's important to keep learning and bridge across these different disciplines, what sort of skills do you sort of feel are the most translatable across? What sort of things can you learn or continually work on learning or develop even outside of work, or through school, or however it is, wherever that learning is coming from, that help to bridge those gaps across disciplines and topics and areas of subject expertise and so on?
Well, I think if you were to try and bridge the gap, you have to be very careful that you don't go into a domain where you're not competent. So for instance, if I'm in a meeting with a couple of bridge engineers, structural design engineers, there's no way I would ever chime in that respect, because I would have no idea what I'm talking about. But if they're talking about some like a material application, like let's say a bridge bearing pad, that in terms of what properties it needs to have, I could chime in on in that aspect. So basically, you have to know the limits of your knowledge, and don't offer any advice unless you're absolutely sure that that advice is correct.
I think that's a really good point from Winston there. I think, and it brings up a couple. I'd say if you're not in a sort of a client side meeting, if you're discussing things internally, and you find yourself in that position where, well, I'd almost take a different tack on it. So like, let's say it is an internal discussion. I think a very good skill is, being able to formulate questions in sort of a professional and friendly challenge kind of way. So tact is an important sort of thing to develop there, where you certainly don't want to, if it's outside your domain, you don't want to say like, well, I've read an article yesterday and this is actually how it is, when someone else has 20 years of experience. But it sometimes can be, sometimes people who are in the field for a long time, you can have blinders, you can forget about something that is just adjacent to that particular field, or something that doesn't get considered. So while I'd say like you want to be careful when sort of bringing things up in that setting with other experts, I do think like it can be appropriate to ask the right kind of question where maybe something hasn't been addressed, or in a way that surfaces a particular issue, so that something that could be a concern that may not be, maybe outside of the sphere of what's being discussed, but could be still quite important, that it gets raised. And I think you shouldn't, you do need, there has to be some tact to it, but you should never feel, as an engineer, that you can't raise or challenge something, to make sure that someone who sure is brighter than you in the room can give you like a full and complete explanation. And where that explanation is lacking, maybe it's something that that there needs to be more thought or discussion on. Maybe that's a controversial view. I don't.
No, I think
I agree with that.
It was sort of I think that was almost what I was asking most of the question, is these sort of softer skills or ways of acting or carrying yourself that translate to that you learn, not necessarily in a formal way like through school or through reading or so on, but just kind of come with time, or that become part of your daily work, that might not be the same as in a purely academic environment.
Yeah, I felt like this was a game of, it's a really old game show, but Password, and I didn't want to be the first one to say communications skills, but it's I worked with someone in my last job, and he was sort of had experience in politics. He was a chief officer, C-suite guy, but even he was very good and very tactful about, he wanted to make the space comfortable before he ever challenged someone. So, he would usually preface things with, it's versions of like, is it okay if I say something here? Or I have an observation, or anything that sort of, you'd often say like, can I make an observation? And that, at least in that instance, as an example, it provides, a sense of whether that audience is actually in a place to hear from you. And they may say, we don't want to hear observations right now. And that's the end of that discussion. But they may see like, they're now primed to hear what this person has to say, rather than just jumping right in and sort of ramming your idea or your comment into the conversation. Make sure that you've sort of, make that space for yourself, and you're acknowledging maybe the experts in the room as well at the same time, before you just jump right in. So there's all sorts of, I guess, books on how to, that kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, like diplomacy or like communication skills, that can certainly help to take like a lot of technical savvy, and then make sure that you're not being lost in translation, as you have a room that may cross-cut all sorts of different areas of the company, like whether it's I don't know, business or pure science or accounting or something else. And so it's communication skills are key, and we may overlook them. It's like, how can they not understand what I'm saying, and or how can they not follow the logic? You sometimes do need to make it something that is as simple enough for like a golden retriever to understand, I think that's a quote from a movie I watched once, but it's just like, speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old child, like, and explain it to me in that sense. But anyway, so communication skills, very, very important.
Yeah, I'd like to add that I guess in the technology field or in the chemistry field and the science field in general, students are normally, I would say, introverts. I don't know if anybody would agree with that. But as you go out in the workforce, you really have to challenge yourself and you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. It might be maybe volunteering to give a presentation, things like that. Get yourself out of that comfort zone and develop those social skills, because that's what gets you noticed. Your ability to talk to other people, to basically
Build a rapport.
pardon?
Build
Yeah.
a rapport.
Yeah, you have to build a rapport, not come across as being too arrogant. You have to use tact. You have to you basically have to be effective and professional. So those skills, those social skills, you really, I had to work on that a lot when I just started working and get out of my comfort zone.
Well, thank you, panelists, and thank you, Peter, for bringing that question. I believe there is one question from Eric. It says, when moving to a new field, how do you approach learning the required knowledge without becoming overwhelmed by the volume of information? Anyone can chime in. Yeah.
It's a good question. I'll take 20 seconds and I'll yield to the other panelists. But I think when I, as an example, when I moved from energy to transit, I had no background in transit. One of the first things I did in my role is I went around and I interviewed about 40 executives in transit. And the purpose of those conversations was to find out, to get the pulse of the organization and kind of what people were feeling from like a management perspective. But at the same time, it helped to shed light on, in those conversations, what are the themes that were important, and sort of where could I focus my attention to provide value in that new organization. And it helped to steer. And really the people who are working there, if you're not asking them like, what should I learn? And you ask them other questions or start a conversation that's adjacent to that, you get those answers if you're willing to actively listen and kind of ask kind of follow on questions and really be in that full listening mode, not listening as, waiting for your turn to speak, but more listening with the sense of processing that information and then being prepared to dig deeper on particular issues. I think, yeah, like interviewing your colleagues or taking someone for coffee and asking them, it's two birds, one stone. Like you can sort of have a social engagement with another colleague, and every time you do this, it gets easier and easier and easier. Like I was a horrible introvert when I was younger, and when I started to play tennis and I had to coach tennis and talk to people, guess what? You get over that very quickly about just public speaking and that sort of anxiety. So, yeah, that's one approach that can be taken.
Yeah, I guess as you let's say you get into a new position. I guess one of the strategies you could do is you identify certain mentors and you kind of you learn from them. So like that's one way you can approach it.
Yep, this is pretty much what I did. When I started at Segpol, I found, I identified 2-3 guys there. Said, you know what, I'm gonna stick to those guys because they can help me with. Of course, they've been with Segpol for more than 10 years. They know things that are important. You guys should be aware the politics that are played in the company. Each company has different politics, and you gotta play these things. It's just, you cannot just be so introverted and then just seated at your desk and then don't talk, don't socialize, don't build that. Nothing is, it won't survive. So you need to know people, talk, identify those that who you have that chemistry and get along with them and say and pretty much what they said, right? So and things will, I would say, get better to you. So, and then happening, and this is the way that it is.
Yeah, and talking to people, it makes the workday more pleasant too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. We're just about out of time here, and I see we have another long list of questions. Before we address that, is there a way for our audience to reach out to you guys after this, if they have any further questions specifically?
Sure. You have
What?
my email.
So email address.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the panelists are all on. I'm happy to be approached like just cold on LinkedIn or that particular platform. If you have a question, just connect with me and just go ahead and ask your questions or that sort of thing. I'm happy to. I mentor all sorts of people, like whether it's informally or formally, and yeah, I'm happy to provide any insight if it's helpful. So, or to just sort of listen and ask questions to help people to figure out where they want to go with their careers.
Same to me.
All right. So email or LinkedIn. We can share that afterwards. I see people have also taken the poll. Great. Thank you for that. And do we have enough time for another question, Peter? Or
I think so. I think we can
Yep.
go through. We got about 5 minutes. So
5 minutes.
okay.
Yep.
All right. So one last question before we go. If I can summarize it, I guess would be, what was there a challenge finding a job of chemical engineering nature in Canada, or would you and within your comfort zone, or would you recommend any industries where chemical engineers are needed?
I think there's a lot of need for chemical engineers in southern Ontario, Alberta. So I think chemical engineers do pretty well in Canada.
Could you give anyone? Yeah.
Sorry, at this point I will just disagree a little bit with with you. Just the thing is, of course, absolutely. In this, that's why to some extent I agree with what he said. So of course we need chemical engineers, right? So I think now what's going on is nowadays is we are having sort of a transition in the market, especially related to oil companies. Okay, so petrochemical companies, which I would say Alberta would be most affected with that, and some companies here I know here in Sarnia, in Ontario, in Sarnia, and so on. But the thing is, what I would say is, not saying that don't go for this petrochemical field because the possibilities is going to be less. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you guys keep aware that, because this is what's going on. And my company, I've been talking to people in Germany about this, engineers in there, and then what is happening now is, especially in the automotive industry, is happening a transition, what is called electrification. So cars now will be electric. So this old, I would say old style combustion engine will end up. So cars will be electric. Germany has a protocol to change their fleet, national fleet, until 2029 by 80%. So 80%, in other words, plain English, 80% of the cars in Germany will be electric. So, and then you understand, oh, well, how about gas? No gas. So, and then you've got to be smart and think back and say, how will those chemical companies, petrochemical companies, change their distillation process when you distill your oil, and then you have a fraction on the top of your distillation column, which is octanol, which is gasoline, and say, well, what are we going to do with this now, right? So, and then we will not have the same application as we have now, because cars are becoming electric. So this is one thing that we gotta think about it. And then when you say that old style, that old chemical engineer style, like when I graduated, oil was the top. So chemical engineers, they were made to work with oil and gas, mostly. This type of what we call energy systems, right? As a chemical engineer. So this concept of chemical engineer has changed. You have chemical engineers now working with pharmaceuticals, working with medical device. I am an example of this. So you have chemical engineers working with different things, not only with oil. So I would say here in Canada, you've got to make a research and understand how the those industries they behave in terms of opportunities. And then go to Indeed and just type their chemical engineering jobs, and then you're gonna see that lots of chemical engineering jobs. You still have something in the oil industry, but you guys, I'm saying this because you are the future. You guys are so young. So you look ahead and say, okay, 10, 15 years ago, you know what I mean? Like what is going to happen with this oil industry? So I'm not saying don't go for this because we will not be uh, um, successful. This is not the point, but you've got to look to other, you've got to look at other fields as well, right? Especially when you graduate and then you go for a degree program. If you want to go for a degree program of being a technologist, think about this. So but in terms of jobs, we still like are on the top. And then don't forget chemical engineers, they are pretty smart people.
If I might try to sort of add on to what Rodrigo said there, it's with this revolution in petrochemical technology comes a lot of opportunity, right? So all of these companies now are turning towards sustainables as a alternative. They might not know what to do with the C8 fraction off the column, but they're going to figure out some way to apply that expertise to an emerging technology. So where one industry wanes, another one starts to expand. So you may find that that field might not be specific to oil or petroleum, but it may become a place where there's lots of opportunity for emerging chemical engineers and technologists to work, just maybe in a much less traditional way than we did in the past.
Yeah, and I'd say when you're looking for these kind of roles within other spaces, like don't think about it from like a search optimization point of view. So not every job that will require a chemical engineer will specifically seek someone chemical engineer in the title. So if you look through job postings and you look at some of the keywords that come up, really you can do, if you're looking for your first job, like do a bit more of if you see keywords popping up all the time, pop those into Google Trends and see if those are really trending terms. Start trying to find the positions associated with those keywords that are showing up in across other job postings, not just specifically like a chemical analyst or chemical engineer. So you may find all sorts of interesting jobs that do require chemical engineers, but just don't have that in the title.
I think Rodrigo especially is a testament to that in the number of industries that you've been in. Chemistry touches everything, so
yeah,
it can really there's a lot more than just these traditional sectors that you can look at. And thank you for that link, Vince, in the chat. It's really good
Sure.
Place to look at where there's emerging trends and where you can maybe diversify your career search or your ongoing learning in your career.
Yeah, sometimes when, especially fresh out of school, you look for a job, you really don't have the luxury of choosing which field you work in. You basically just want to get a job, and from there you could branch out maybe to get into the field that you want. When I graduated from Lakehead, I mainly took environmental and air pollution types courses because I wanted to basically save the world and prevent pollution. But when I got out in industry, I realized there wasn't very much need for that anymore, because that saving the environment, that happens that basically follows politics. So it happens every 4 years or so. But if you want to survive, I chose a job in the polymer field, in plastics, which is completely what I didn't want to do, but I ended up loving it in the end. So sometimes you have to be versatile, and you have to basically follow where the job is.
Yeah. And this is a great note to wrap it all up, because in the end we come back to the same thing of lifelong learning and how it is going to help us throughout our career and life in general, really. I guess we're just about out of time, am I right? So I would first of all like to thank everyone. Thank you to all our panelists, Winston, Rodrigo, Vince. Thank you for sharing all your experiences with us. That was today's discussion was packed with all information and honestly like motivation to just get it. And thank you, Peter, for helping host this event. Thank you, Sarah, for creating this link, and thank you to our other volunteers who have been working in the background to make sure everybody comes in and all the housekeeping work, Sad and Wang. And thank you to audience for coming and giving us great questions and making this happen, because this is a discussion, this is a webinar. It wouldn't be anything without you guys. So thank you so much for this amazing night.
And thank you,
Yeah.
Christina, for fielding all the questions and taking us through tonight's panel.
Thank you. I guess that should be it. And thank you all our partners on screen that I've just shared. And yeah, if anyone wants to still hang around and talk a bit, I believe you can, right? With the panelists? So. Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right.
Yeah. And so connect on LinkedIn with any of our panelists if you'd like to. And for those of you who are my students, I guess I'll see you bright and early tomorrow. And for the others, have a good rest of the evening.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for this. Christina, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you. And I wish you guys all the best, and keep yourselves motivated. And despite of this last year was an odd year because this COVID is the things, but hopefully the vaccine is coming soon by June, and we're gonna get vaccinated.
Things are getting better.
Yes, the things are gonna get better. Yes, just keep yourself optimistic. All right.
All right.
Right. Thank you. I will stick around.
Hey, thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
All right.
Is it still recording?
Stop it over there.
I will